Black CEO, mocked by billionaire heirs. Then she destroys their $500M partnership in silence. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Hey, Blackie, go wait over in the service area. The words sliced through the golden hum of the ballroom. It wasn't whispered. It was performed. A woman in a navy silk gown, champagne in hand, lips painted confidence pointed toward the catering doors, as if she was swatting away smoke. Around her, 3 tuxedoed men laughed. Sharp, careless laughter that echoed against the crystal chandeliers. For a second, the music kept playing. Violins, chatter, the clink of crystal. Then the sound collapsed under the weight of that one sentence. Amara Lewis stood perfectly still. White suit, no jewelry, no entourage. Just stillness, deliberate, disarming. She didn't look at the woman. She didn't look at the men. She just adjusted her sleeve and said quietly, "I'm right where I need to be." But they didn't stop. One of the heirs, tall, smug, born into arrogance, grinned. "Really? That suit looks borrowed. Maybe help refill the champagne instead?" Laughter again. Louder this time, rehearsed like a family trait. At the far corner of the ballroom, a waiter froze mid-step. His eyes darted between Amara and the group. He knew that tone. Everyone did. Amara's hand slipped into her pocket. A gold phone glinted under the chandelier light. Her thumb hovered, calm as a held breath. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Amara. She pressed one button. The screen lit up. Protocol, Sigma standby. Her company's internal code for emergency contract freeze. She didn't look at the screen again. "Excuse me," one of the men said, blocking her path, smirking. "The VIP table is for partners, not guests of staff." He waved toward the far corner like he was directing traffic. Amara's eyes met his. Calm. "Partners," she repeated softly. "You're right." She stepped past him, her heels clicking like a metronome against marble. Each sound measured, deliberate, surgical. The woman in the blue gown leaned to her friend. "Who invited her anyway?" Her voice dripped with entitlement. "Someone should tell security." A murmur passed through the nearby crowd, not outrage, just the soft curiosity of people watching a fire start. No one moved to stop it. Amara reached the center table, the one with the $500 million partnership contract folded neatly inside a leather binder. She looked at it, then at the logo engraved in gold. Harrington Global Investments. Her reflection stared back from the surface, calm, precise, unbroken. In her earpiece, a faint voice came through. Her assistant, calm as she was. "Ma'am, the press are asking if you'll sign tonight." Amara's reply was nearly a whisper. "Not anymore." "Is wanna gloom in the city-aided telbrods?" She lifted her chin, the chandelier light catching the quiet fury in her eyes. Every insult, every laugh, every condescending stare, all of it folded into the silence now radiating from her like gravity. Behind her, the heirs kept laughing, unaware they were already the past tense. The waiter at the corner whispered to himself, voice trembling but sure, "They just mocked the woman who owns the deal." Amara turned slightly, phone still in hand, and said softly into it, "Cancel the $500 million partnership, effective immediately." The music stopped, the laughter stumbled, and the empire began to crack. The chandeliers still glowed, but the laughter had thinned. Somewhere a violin faltered, one note too sharp, too human. Amara didn't move. She stood at the center of a storm built from pearls and prejudice. On her screen, a single notification pulsed. Protocol, Sigma, executing. No one around her noticed the silent implosion of $500 million. From across the ballroom, a tall man with silvered hair pushed through the crowd. Richard Harrington II, patriarch of the family, unaware his empire was now bleeding capital by the minute. He smiled, all practiced charm. "I hope my children haven't overwhelmed you, miss?" He paused, expecting her to supply a modest name, a reason to disappear. "Lewis," she said evenly. Ah, catering? He asked. The room held its breath. She tilted her head slightly. Finance. The word landed like marble against glass. Clean, solid, impossible to ignore. He chuckled, unbothered. Of course. Well, enjoy the evening. Then he turned away, dismissing her like a shadow. No outburst. No scene. Only silence, weaponized, controlled. A young waiter from earlier lingered nearby, pretending to refill glasses. His voice shook as he whispered, Ma'am, should I call someone? Amara glanced at him, eyes soft for the first time. You already did, she said quietly, by standing still. Across the hall, Edward Harrington clinked his glass for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, a toast to legacy, to class, and to keeping our circles exclusive. The crowd laughed. It wasn't humor, it was obedience. Amara turned toward the window. Manhattan glittered below her city, her skyline, her companies lighting half the horizon. She remembered being 22, standing in a cheap conference suit at a corporate mixer. A man had looked her up and down and said, The interns wait outside. She waited not outside, but in the same room until she bought his company 5 years later. The memory wasn't pain anymore. It was proof. She breathed out slowly. Same script, she murmured. Different room. See, that ought to mean. Even Olive Goddard is his 3D. Her assistant's voice returned through the earpiece, calm but firm. Confirmation received. All Finovate transfers frozen. Media on hold. Amara replied. Good. Let them enjoy the illusion until it breaks itself. Behind her, the laughter rose again. Someone whispered, She's still here. Another voice, sharp and certain. Ignore her. People like that always want attention. Amara smiled faintly, not cruelly, just knowingly. Because they were right about one thing. She did want attention. Not from them, from justice. She reached for a glass of still water, lifted it like a toast to no one, and whispered under her breath, To the end of pretending. And then was the problem. The waiter watched her, realization dawning. He'd seen power before, loud, boastful, dressed in ego. But this was different. This was power that didn't need to prove itself. And somewhere in the distance, a clock struck 9, the exact moment the $500 million contract began to unravel. The ballroom had recovered its rhythm on the surface. Laughter again, glasses raised, a jazz trio reclaiming the air. But beneath it all, tension hummed like an electric wire ready to snap. Amara stood by the long marble table where the contract folder still waited, unclaimed. A server brushed past and whispered, You all right, ma'am? She nodded once. Perfectly. It may be Wana in a news round. Across the room, Edward Harrington III noticed. He leaned toward his sister, smirking. She's still here, uninvited and unbothered. The sister Victoria, diamonds heavy on her wrist, didn't bother to whisper. Maybe she's hoping to meet a sponsor, she said, her words dipped in poison. The surrounding guests chuckled politely, pretending it wasn't cruelty. Amara turned, gaze steady, and for a heartbeat their eyes met. Victoria looked away first. Always the sign of who truly held control. Then came the event coordinator, nervous, young, clearly sent by someone above her pay grade. Miss, I'm sorry, but the Harrington family asked that this section remain private. In an more dunalivire, her voice trembled as she said it. Amara smiled gently. And yet, here I am. The coordinator hesitated. If you could just step into the lounge area, please. Amara looked past her to the rows of executives and investors who had stopped pretending not to watch. Every face a mirror of quiet complicity. No one stepped forward. Not one. She didn't argue. She simply asked, Tell me something. Do they speak to every woman this way, or only the ones who remind them the world is changing? The coordinator froze, the kind of stillness born from guilt. Behind her, Edward's voice sliced through the silence. Security's on standby if she refuses. That word again. Refuses. Like existing in that room was defiance. Amara folded her hands calmly. Security? For a guest? Edward grinned. For a distraction. The room tittered again, forced, brittle laughter trying to cover discomfort. Her assistant's voice whispered through the earpiece. We've confirmed their investment exposure, ma'am. They can't afford to lose you. Amara didn't smile. Then let them find out how it feels to watch something disappear quietly. She reached for the contract folder, and opened it just enough for the embossed signature line to catch the light. Her name already printed there, black ink on gold paper. The crowd leaned in slightly, drawn by the quiet gravity of that gesture. Edward's mother, the matriarch, finally stepped forward, voice smooth but firm. "This is a family affair, dear. You must understand how appearances matter." Amara's reply was soft, razor clean. "So do principles." A ripple passed through the room, unease mixed with recognition. Someone whispered, "She's someone important." Another muttered, "She's making a scene." But Amara wasn't making a scene. She was building a record. The young waiter still stood by the service door, phone in hand but not recording, just watching. His expression shifted from confusion to quiet awe. The music faltered again. Edward's voice rose, louder, brittle. "Who even invited you? Is Liverbaston in Liverdation?" In the maid back hall braided. Amara turned, her tone almost tender. "You did. When you asked for my company's money." For the first time that night, silence didn't belong to her. It belonged to them. And under that silence, the ground began to move. The laughter didn't stop this time, it evolved. From mockery to theater, a social ritual wrapped in silk and champagne. Edward Harrington raised his glass. "To our guests," he said loudly, glancing straight at Amara. "To knowing our place." The crowd clinked their glasses. The sound rang like a verdict. A drop of red wine slipped from his glass and splashed onto the tablecloth near her. He smiled. "Ah, accidents happen. It is the messes, one crate." Then, as if performing for the room, he reached for a new glass, the same deep crimson, and poured it straight onto her sleeve. The gasp was instant. Half the room froze. The other half grinned behind polite horror. "Now you match the decor," Edward murmured, laughing under his breath. The stain spread slowly across Amara's white jacket, deliberate, symbolic, meant to brand. Her fingers twitched once, then stilled. She lifted her eyes, met his, and in that silence something ancient moved, not rage, not shame, precision. Across the room a camera flash went off. Someone whispered, "Don't, she'll sue." Someone else muttered, "She won't. Look at her, she's frozen." Frozen? No. Calculating. She placed the wine glass down gently, so softly the crystal barely touched the table. Then she said, almost conversationally, "You just poured $500 million on that fabric." Edward blinked, confused. "What did you just say?" Amara didn't answer him. She turned to the young waiter standing near the pillar. "Could you bring me a napkin, please?" Her tone was calm, executive. The boy nodded quickly and stepped away. The matriarch, Victoria's mother, hissed through her teeth. "That was uncalled for." Edward smirked. "Oh, lighten up. She's fine." But the room wasn't fine. Something in the air had changed. The laughter now sounded too loud. The chandeliers too bright. The privilege too naked. Amara dabbed the stain, then folded the napkin perfectly into a square. Her voice was measured. "You've proven something tonight, Mr. Harrington, but not what you think." He leaned closer, tone dripping arrogance. "What? That you don't belong here?" She didn't blink. "That class isn't about money. It's about conduct." His smirk faltered. "You're talking to a Harrington." "And you're talking," she said, "to the woman funding you." A few heads turned sharply. Someone whispered, "Wait, what?" The ravel down in Seteratus, in Winowning the Dalgin of Dassage, in Fiver Way. But before realization could settle, Edward's sister stepped forward, trying to recover the room. She laughed too brightly. "She's joking, obviously. People like her don't." "People like me," Amara interrupted quietly, "build what you inherit." The sentence fell like stone into still water, no noise, just impact. Behind her, the waiter returned with the napkin tray trembling in his hands. He met her eyes again, this time with something new. Faith. Amara took it, nodded once in thanks, and pressed the cloth to her sleeve. The red smear spread, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she said softly, almost to herself, "Every stain tells a story. I just prefer mine to end clean." In Axis's way. The jazz stopped mid-note. No one knew why, but the pianist's hands froze on the keys as if the music itself refused to play for cruelty. Edward's father appeared again, frowning. "What's going on here?" No one answered, because deep down, everyone already knew. Amara looked around the ballroom, one slow, deliberate scan, then down at the contract still lying open. Her reflection stared back through the faint wine splatter, and as the chandeliers flickered overhead, she whispered under her breath almost a vow. Enough! The silence was heavier than the chandelier above them. Every eye in the room followed her now, the woman. They thought they could humiliate quietly. No one breathed. No one laughed. Amara straightened her jacket, the crimson stain catching the light like a declaration. She tapped the earpiece once. "Nia?" she said, her tone low, steady. On the other end, her assistant answered immediately. "Yes, ma'am." Protocol. Sigma confirm full termination. Begin audit sequence and patch the line to legal. Understood. It took less than 5 seconds. 5 seconds for the world beneath their marble floors to shift. Edward frowned, trying to recover dominance. "Excuse me, what are you doing?" She looked up at him, voice smooth as glass. "Something you can't undo." Her phone vibrated once. Confirmed. Harrington deal. Terminated. Effective immediately. The words glowed faintly on the screen, reflected in her eyes. No drama, no shout, just execution. A hush fell across the ballroom, like velvet being drawn over noise. Then whispers started, tiny sparks of panic dressed as curiosity. Edward's sister whispered to a friend, "She's bluffing," the friend replied. "Then why is her phone still connected to someone named legal director?" The patriarch approached again, uneasy now. "Miss Lewis, perhaps we started on the wrong foot. Let's discuss this." Amara interrupted softly. "You don't discuss a deal you've already lost." He blinked, stunned. "What do you mean lost?" Her gaze lifted to meet his calm, unshaken. "Your liquidity clause depended on Finovate's transfer by midnight. That clock behind you? It's 9:43. If I were you, I'd call your banker." The words sliced cleaner than any scream. Across the room, Victoria muttered, "This can't be happening." Edward's jaw tightened. "You think you can walk into our event? Threaten our name?" "I didn't threaten it," Amara said. "I corrected it." A few guests stepped back, unsure if they were witnessing power or ruin, maybe both. Someone at the bar whispered, "She's the investor." Someone else corrected, "No, she was the investor." Amara turned toward the waiter, who'd stood frozen since the wine spill. "You can relax now," she said gently. "It's handled." He nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes, ma'am." Her assistant's voice returned in her ear. "Legal confirms suspension registered. Press team standing by. Do you want to go public?" Amara's reply was calm, deliberate. "Not yet. Let them tell the story first, it'll sound better coming from them." Edward's phone buzzed. Then his sister's. Then the patriarch's. 3 screens, lighting up in unison. Urgent. Transfer canceled. Review contract terms. Color drained from Edward's face. He turned to his father. "Dad, she's serious." Richard Harrington's voice cracked for the first time. "What the hell is going on?" "It is shitty." Amara picked up the contract folder, folded it once, and slid it across the table toward him. "This," she said, "was supposed to be the future of your company. You turned it into a lesson instead." The room pulsed with a strange energy, not rage, not shame, realization. The power dynamic had flipped completely, and she hadn't raised her voice once. As she walked past Edward, he whispered, desperate, "You'll regret this." Amara didn't even glance his way. "No," she said softly. "You will every time you look at that stain." The ballroom had gone quiet again this time. Not from tension, but confusion. Phones buzzed. Managers whispered. The golden illusion of the Harrington dynasty began to fracture like glass under heat. Amara didn't move. She let the chaos grow on its own, like a truth that no one could swallow fast enough. Richard Harrington's voice broke through the noise. "Explain yourself," he demanded. "Who do you think you are?" He meant it as an insult. But in that single question, he handed her the stage. Amara turned slowly, calm, deliberate, until she faced him under the chandelier's white fire. "You want to know who I am?" Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Silence carried it across every corner of the ballroom. She reached into her clutch and drew out a small black ID card, matte finish. No logo, just a single gold emblem embossed in the center. When the nearest guest leaned in, his breath caught. He knew that insignia. Everyone in finance did. Finovate Global. The company behind the merger. The company worth billions. The company she owned. "I'm Amara Lewis," she said evenly, "founder and chief executive officer of Finovate Global Holdings." No one spoke, not even the pianist. The waiter at the edge of the room dropped a tray. The crash echoed like punctuation. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Another, "She's the Lewis?" The matriarch's face drained of color. "That's impossible," she stammered. Amara smiled gently. "I hear that often." Edward stepped forward, disbelief flickering into anger. "You expect us to believe?" He stopped. Because the large LED display behind him, the one that moments ago had shown the partnership slideshow, suddenly refreshed itself. A headline appeared. Finovate Global terminates $500 meters deal with Harrington Investments. Effective immediately. Below it, her face, her title, her quote from a recent Forbes cover, "Power isn't about volume. It's about verification." The room gasped as one. Phones came out like weapons, snapping pictures, filming, documenting. Amara didn't flinch. She looked directly into the nearest lens and said calmly, "You don't get to humiliate the person writing your paycheck." A ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd, shock, disbelief, a kind of awakening. Guests began to shift away from the Harrington family, the way people instinctively step back from a crumbling wall. The patriarch tried again, voice shaking now. This is a misunderstanding. We can fix this." Amara's reply was surgical. "No, Mr. Harrington. You had your chance to understand before you spoke. God admonish yourself." For a heartbeat, the chandelier lights flickered reflections, catching in every glass, every polished surface, and in that shimmering chaos, every heir saw themselves clearly for the first time. Not powerful, not superior, just exposed. The young waiter whispered, "They mocked the wrong woman." Someone near him answered, "No, they mocked the wrong CEO." Amara glanced around the ballroom one last time, her gaze sweeping over each face that had laughed, each eye that had looked away. "Legacy," she said quietly, "isn't inherited. It's earned." Her voice carried through the hush like a closing door. And then somewhere at the back of the room, applause began, soft, unsure, but real. Not for her wealth, not for her power, for the way she stood unmoved, unbent, undeniable. As the cameras kept flashing, Edward's expression finally broke. No arrogance left, only fear. He whispered to his father, "What do we do?" Amara turned, already walking toward the exit. Her answer drifted back through the silence, calm as gravity. "Watch." For 10 full seconds, the ballroom didn't breathe. The headlines still glowed on the massive screen behind them. Bold, final, irreversible. Finovate Global terminates $500 meters deal. Each letter felt like a hammer against legacy. Edward's hand trembled around his glass. His sister whispered, "Turn it off." But the system didn't respond. The feed was automated, running directly from Finovate's press release server. No one in that room had the authority to stop it. Reporters who'd been sipping quietly at the back were already moving forward. Phones up, cameras recording. "Miss Lewis, is this official?" one of them shouted. Amara didn't even look their way. Her stillness was answer enough. The matriarch clutched her pearls, a reflex of entitlement, not fear. She whispered, "This can't be happening. At our own event." Someone nearby murmured, "It's not your event anymore." The crowd began to split like water around a rock. Investors moved subtly away from the Harrington family, whispering into their phones, issuing quiet sell orders. PR agents scurried toward the exits, muttering, "Damage control." The air smelled faintly of perfume and panic. A security guard approached Amara, hesitantly, earpiece crackling. "Ma'am, do you need escort service?" She looked at him, a small, kind smile. "No, thank you." "They do." He blinked, uncertain, then nodded once and stepped aside. On the far side of the room, Edward's phone buzzed again. He answered, voice sharp. "I said I'll handle it," then froze. Whatever he heard on the other end drained the color from his face. His father turned to him, desperate. "What did they say?" Edward swallowed hard. "Our credit line's been suspended." The words rippled through the air like thunder after lightning. The matriarch gasped. "But that's impossible." Amara's voice, calm, almost merciful, cut through the noise. "That's what you said about me." The entire crowd shifted again. Phones tilted toward her, not as weapons this time, but as witness. Someone whispered, "This is history." The young waiter still stood by the service entrance, eyes wide. He mouthed, "Thank you." Amara met his gaze and gave the slightest nod, no triumph, no arrogance, just acknowledgement. Across the room, Victoria tried to salvage composure. She laughed brittle, hollow. Well, I suppose we'll all have a story to tell. No one laughed back. Not a single sound. The music had stopped long ago, but the silence now felt like an audience holding its breath before credits roll. Every glance, every whisper, every recording lens aimed toward the same woman they had dismissed 30 minutes ago. Richard Harrington tried one last time. Miss Lewis, please. Let's not do this in public. We can fix it privately. Amara turned slowly toward him. No, public is where you chose to break it. His mouth opened, then closed again, the last breath of control leaving him. Behind her, a reporter's voice rang out. Miss Lewis, would you call this revenge? She paused, eyes on the crimson stain drying on her sleeve, then said softly, no. Correction. A wave of camera flashes followed, each burst lighting her face like a strobe, calm, poised, absolute. And in that frozen storm of collapsing wealth and flashing bulbs, every heir, every guest, every journalist understood the same thing. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't moved an inch, but she had just dismantled a dynasty. The chandeliers flickered just slightly as if even the light was hesitating to witness what came next. The ballroom no longer looked golden. It looked exposed. Every shimmer now felt like evidence. Amara stood by the main table, hands folded loosely. Her phone vibrated once a single coded ping. Finovate legal. Termination complete. Asset freeze authorized. She exhaled slowly. The calm of someone who has waited years for this moment, not to retaliate, but to correct the balance. Nia, she said softly into her earpiece. Yes, ma'am. Initiate the compliance lockout. Full sweep. All Harrington access credentials revoked. Confirmed. Executing. Across the city, in a glass tower lit against the night, Finovate's servers obeyed. Within seconds, screens in the Harrington family office went black. User denied. Access revoked. The empire that mocked her had just been signed out of its own wealth. Edward's phone buzzed again, angry red notifications flashing across his screen. What's happening? He shouted. His father grabbed the device, but the message was the same. Account suspended. Breach of conduct. The guests around them murmured, some in disbelief, some in quiet admiration. One whispered, she really did it. Another answered, no, she always could. Richard Harrington's voice rose, trembling. You can't just cut us off. Amara turned to him, eyes calm but razor-sharp. You cut yourselves off when you confuse courtesy with weakness. Victoria stepped forward, voice cracking. You've ruined our family. Amara didn't blink. No. I've reminded it of consequences. The matriarch, desperate, reached for Amara's arm. Please, we can apologize. Security stepped in, firm but gentle. Ma'am, that's not advisable. The room seemed to shrink, not physically but morally. All that privilege, all that posture, collapsing into the size of a mistake. The young waiter watched from the side, jaw tight with a mix of awe and vindication. He whispered to another staffer. She didn't yell. She didn't even raise her voice. The other replied, she didn't have to. Amara walked back to the center, stopping beneath the largest chandelier. Its crystals caught her reflection 100 times. One woman turned into a constellation. She spoke clearly, every syllable like a verdict. Effective immediately, Finovate Global withdraws all capital from Harrington Investments. All subsidiary rights are nullified. All future dealings terminated. A silence so deep followed that you could hear the ice melting in untouched glasses. She looked at Edward one last time. You poured wine on my jacket. I just poured sunlight on your empire. The crowd exhaled collectively, the sound of people realizing they just witnessed power redefined. Her assistant's voice chimed in her ear. All processes complete, Miss Lewis. They're locked out. It is a bodily waiting to do. Amara smiled slightly. Good. Let them see what silence can do. Reporters surged forward again. Miss Lewis, is this a statement? One called out. She paused at the doorway, her silhouette framed by the cold city light spilling in. It's an ending, she said, and a reminder respect is not a courtesy, it's a contract. The doors closed behind her with a soft hydraulic click, not loud, but final. Inside, the chandeliers dimmed, and the Harrington legacy flickered out with them. Outside the crystal ballroom, Manhattan glowed like circuitry, billions of lights pulsing against the glass skyline. Inside, the echoes of Amara's departure still lingered, like smoke after fireworks. But the silence didn't last. It spread. Through screens, through whispers, through the thousand small ways truth travels when it can't be contained. The first clip hit social media before she reached her car. A 28-second video. Edward Harrington, laughing, wine spilling, Amara standing still. Caption: she didn't yell, she ended them. Within minutes, it had 1 million views. By the time her driver opened the door, notifications were already flooding in. Number Amara Lewis. Number Silent Power. Number Justice in White. Inside the ballroom, chaos unfolded. Reporters cornered the Harrington heirs, flashing lights like interrogation lamps. Do you have a comment on the termination? It is not my crowd this credity. Was the racial remark real? Will you issue a public apology? Edward's jaw clenched. No comment. His mother tried to cover the cameras with her hand. It only made the headlines worse. A junior investor live-streamed from the corner, whispering into his phone, "I watched it happen. Every second." She didn't raise her voice once, and she still owned the room. The broadcast went viral. By midnight, every major outlet had the story. Black CEO walks out of $500M deal after public humiliation. Underneath, a photo of Amara white suit, red stain, calm face standing beneath a chandelier like judgment incarnate. Meanwhile, on the 48th floor of Finovate Tower, her assistant Nia refreshed the analytics dashboard. The partnership tab blinked red, terminated. The public sentiment line soared green. She smiled to herself. She did it, she whispered. Downstairs, Amara sat quietly in the back seat of her town car, city lights sliding across her reflection. Her phone buzzed non-stop, but she didn't look at it. She was watching something else, her own silence playing out in the headlines. The driver glanced in the mirror. Rough night, ma'am? She smiled faintly. Necessary night. At that same moment, the young waiter stood outside the ballroom's back entrance, scrolling through his phone. His clip, the one he'd recorded silently from behind a champagne tower, had just crossed 5 million views. He didn't say a word. He just smiled, whispering, "They'll remember her silence longer than their laughter." Inside, the Harrington patriarch sat alone by the table where the contract once lay. The folder was gone. The stain remained. He reached for his glass, then stopped, realizing it wasn't celebration anymore. Just habit. Someone touched his shoulder. "Sir, CNBC is waiting for your statement," he whispered. There's nothing left to say. On the other side of the city, Amara finally spoke, not to the press, not to the world, but into her voice recorder. Day 1. Silence executed. Impact immediate. Objective. Never vengeance. Only clarity. She looked out the window, lights reflecting like data points on the glass, and added quietly, "They thought they owned the room. They never realized the room was leased." The recorder clicked off. The car turned down Fifth Avenue, headlights slicing through the night. And above the noise of the city, the world began repeating her name, not in whispers anymore, but in headlines. By morning, the name Harrington wasn't spoken with reverence. It was trending under corporate disgrace. News anchors dissected the clip frame by frame. The pour, the smirk, the silence. PR experts called it the most expensive glass of wine ever spilled. At the family estate, blinds were drawn. Reporters crowded the gates. Edward hid behind tinted windows, while his father argued with lawyers over breach clauses and frozen assets. Their empire had collapsed not through scandalous noise, but through verified consequence. Inside, the matriarch watched the replay in silence, the red stain on Amara's jacket burning brighter than any logo her family ever owned. She whispered, "We taught our children how to inherit, not how to respect." Edward slammed a fist onto the table. "She ruined us." His father shook his head slowly. "No, son. We did that ourselves. It is no docs." Stock tickers flashed crimson across news screens. Board members resigned. Investors fled. And as the cameras turned away, a single line remained in every article. She never shouted. She just ended them. The dynasty that once laughed at her was now a footnote. Proof that silence, when wielded with truth, can sound louder than any storm. Dawn broke over Manhattan, pale and silver. Amara sat by the window of her penthouse. Still in the white suit, the faint red stain now dry, almost invisible in the morning light. Her assistant entered quietly. "The board wants a statement." Amara sipped her coffee, eyes still on the skyline. "No statement," she said. "Just results. You after Dan." She opened her laptop, a headline filled the screen. Amara Lewis redefines corporate power with one word: silence. She smiled, but it wasn't pride, it was release. The kind that comes when justice finally breathes. Her phone buzzed with thousands of messages, praise, support, interviews. She ignored them all and whispered to herself, "They saw power. I hope they remember grace." Outside, the city kept moving faster, louder, but Amara stayed still, calm in her victory, the kind that doesn't need noise to be heard. That evening, the city lights returned, the same skyline, but somehow different. On every screen, her story played again. The wine, the silence, the revelation. Not a scandal, a shift. At Finovate Tower, employees watched the clip on repeat. No speeches, no cheers, just quiet pride, the kind that grows when justice is done, without a single raised voice. Down in the lobby, the young waiter from the gala waited with an envelope. Amara approached, offering a calm smile. "You kept your dignity when no one else did," she said, handing him a card. "Come see me Monday. We could use people like you." He nodded, speechless. And as she walked away, the world seemed to hush again, not out of fear, but respect. Narrator voiceover faded in, low and steady. Power doesn't shout. It stands, it waits, and when needed, it ends what disrespects it. A well-done guess. Screen fades to black. Text appears, simple and final. Respect is not given. It's revoked quietly.